Welcome back to this week's edition of Modern Tech and Transformation. I'm very excited to have a new face with us today. As you've heard in some of our previous podcasts, at Resolve Tech Solutions, our foundation was based on our SAP expertise, SAP being the leading ERP platform for several years. So I'm really excited today to have Bimal Soni with us here. He is our Senior Vice President of ERP modernization here at Resolve Tech Solutions. Welcome, Bimal.
Thank you for having me, Carla.
So since it is your first time, tell our audience a little bit about yourself and your background.
Of course. Prior to joining Resolve Tech, I have about 25 years of experience that spans across industry, ERP consulting, and specifically SAP, and a corporate IT role. I have worked in 10 plus industries, delivered 20 plus projects that includes ERP implementations, other enterprise initiatives and technologies, S/4HANA transformations, and I have served or led the organizations of different sizes, from $250 million in revenue all the way to $100 billion plus in revenue every year. The part that I have enjoyed the most is leading the organization or helping the customers through their technology transformation journey, primarily around SAP implementations or SAP transformations. And the role at RTS allows me to do the same, what I enjoy to do the most at a scale. So I'm really looking forward.
No, we're really lucky to have you. So leading an SAP practice, a lot of companies do outsource SAP roles or look for SAP expertise. Why do you think that is? What is complex about SAP?
So there are multiple things that makes SAP a little complicated. So first of all, SAP touches every aspect of the organization, and it requires cross-department collaboration as well as knowledge of the business processes and how solutions work together. And it is hard to acquire that in a short time reading books. So essentially, to be an expert in SAP, you have to work in an SAP for several years. That makes the SAP skills quite challenging to acquire for organizations. And again, because the scale and size of the people that are involved in a SAP transformation and implementation, that just makes it difficult. It's just too many people to manage and too many complexities to manage at the same time.
And what you just said, it reminds me of that one statistic. Mastery is 10,000 hours or something, and that ends up being about 3 years. But if you add to that, then super mastery, whatever, you're definitely like the grandmaster of SAP with 25 years experience.
Well, I've been lucky to be at the right place at the right time.
So as companies, if they're in SAP or looking at SAP, I know we've discussed in the past, and one of the reasons I wanted to bring you on is to talk about these SAP assessments that you've worked on. Tell us a little bit about what an SAP assessment is and the value, like why a company would want to do one.
Okay, so let me start with a very narrow definition, and then we will expand on it. So in the narrow definition of an assessment is really an intentional and deliberate exercise of current state and a future state requirements, and then identifying a path to bridge that gap, if there is a gap. Now, if we expand this further to SAP, it would be identifying what is the current state of SAP that enterprise is running, and how do they get to the latest version of SAP, which is S/4HANA.
So these assessments, does it only make sense if they're already in SAP and they want to assess their current environment, or would you suggest an assessment for someone looking to implement SAP as well?
It's both.
Okay.
It's both. Companies should periodically look at their current technology environment to make sure or to verify that this technology, there are no gaps between the business capability requirements and the technology capabilities to enable that. Because that's what allows organizations to work efficiently. So that companies should do this even if they are running SAP, and of course they have to do it if they are planning to implement SAP.
Okay, great. So we've talked about the why it's important. Let's dive into what an assessment is, an SAP assessment.
So SAP assessment is essentially, as I said earlier, that looking into modernizing their SAP environment. And there could be many reasons why organizations may want to do it. The most common reason in today's time is SAP has announced end of the mainstream support for their ECC platform. Mm-hmm. And they have also released S/4HANA, which is the latest version of SAP back in 2014. However, we know that there are many customers who are still running the older version of SAP, and now they have a need to go to the newer versions of SAP. And in order to achieve that efficiently, making sure that all the new capabilities and solutions that they will build will meet their business needs, assessment is a tool that they could use to achieve that.
So let's dive into that a little bit deeper. What are the key components that take place during an assessment? Like if you had to walk us through step 1, step 2.
So I'm going to expand our earlier definition of assessment and SAP assessment even further. Everything that business does, or everything that technology team does to support a business, is to really meet the business requirements. Over the period, from the time that customers have implemented SAP, over the period of years, business changes. Their market change, their customer change, they may acquire a new company, they enter into a new country, so business constantly changes. And with that, the business requirement constantly changes. And it's always not feasible to keep the ERP or SAP environment up to date to meet those business challenges. Add to that, the technology is changing rapidly. The new dimension products are coming out, and the new AI, ML, and the generative technologies are also changing how business activities are performed in a productive environment. So in order to build a technology solution taking into account the changing business needs requires a structured SAP assessment process. And there are 3 steps to that, the way we do it at RTS. The first step is to defining the future state requirement and aligning an entire organization to that the future state requirement. Step 2 is reviewing and validating and prioritizing the future state requirement. And the step 3 is defining a solution architecture and creating a roadmap that has a timeline to build this capability to support the business. And these are the 3 essential components of any ERP assessment in modern times.
So when you've been assessing companies, right, do you see more errors with companies that try to hyper-customize as opposed to using SAP more out of the box, like 80% out of the box, 20% customized? Do you think some companies, when you're doing these assessments, over-customize and that leads to problems?
So historically, what I have seen is that organizations tend to do what they know, what they have done in the past. And while implementing ERP or going through the transformation, and that's one of the biggest challenge, to lead the customers through the change that will make them more efficient and competitive. So companies who adopt the best practices, their technical debt is lower, and their technology solutions and their SAP solutions are more easily, they're more responsive, and they can adapt to the changing business need easily. When the solution is customized, it makes it hard to upgrade. So I would say that it's hard for a customized environment to upgrade and transfer versus a solution that is built using best practices.
I hear you say change in talking about the organization, change management. How important is that when it comes to any technology, but ERPs, SAP specifically?
So the change management is the most important, one of the, I would say, three most important things to do well while either implementing an ERP or transforming an ERP. The reason being, if we build a tool for the business and the business is not trained to adopt it, they will not be able to make a good use of it and make most value out of it. So change management allows an efficient adoption of the enterprise platform, ERP, or any other platform. So the change management is one of the key components in the transformation.
Absolutely, and I agree with that so much. Even in the marketing world that I live in, change management, new processes, and I believe the best leaders are teachers.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I see that our experts at Resolve Tech Solutions are truly teachers along with leaders and experts. So we're going to wrap up, but I want to talk through any success stories you've had with SAP assessments, any insights you can share about a specific client you worked with and why they needed the assessment and the outcome.
So I would talk about one of the recent RTS engagement. We worked with a customer who was a company that was aspiring to grow globally. And they had recently completed S/4HANA implementation. However, they were barely able to keep up with IT support. And before they go globally, they wanted to RTS to come in and help do the assessment to define the global technology template and the platform and the solution. So when we worked on the project, what we describe as the key steps. We described that those steps were not done in the right sequence. And then to be specifically, what we discovered is that the SAP was implemented as a technology platform, and the organization hasn't really thought through what is their goals and objectives over the next 3 to 5 years. They had not defined and prioritized their capability list. And therefore, the SAP was implemented without taking the business capability requirement prioritization. So the SAP did not deliver, was not built to meet the business requirement, causing a larger issues post go live and a higher support requirement.
And that's heartbreaking to hear because SAP is such a cost-intensive solution for some companies. So if it's not delivering the value, that's definitely difficult. But glad that we offer these assessments that even if they're not realizing that value, there's companies like Resolve Tech Solutions to reach out to. But we did touch a little bit on S4, a little teaser for episodes to come. Bimal will be back, and we will be talking about those S4 migrations and what some of you may say is the dreaded 2027. But thank you, Bimal, for being on today. We appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me.